Ta-da!
Ta-da! Chris, last weekend you had a margarita.
I did.
I mean, that was amazing. That is probably my favorite cocktail. So
Mm.
I need to know, what beer do we have this week that's bringing back our little can opening situation?
I've got the hazy
Hazy.
Connecticut style juicy India Pale Ale from uh, Black Hog Brewing Company in Oxford, Connecticut.
Ooh, very nice. Have you had this particular beer before,
Yes,
Chris?
I have. I believe I've probably had it on here at some point or another. This was
Nice.
actually was hiding in my fridge last week. Actually, it was in there last week, and then
You
I
could have had it last week.
could have.
Well, I think, you were meant to have something different last. What did I even have? I don't think I even had anything. Did I? Did I? I don't think I even had any delicious, beverage last week. I've got a twisted tea. I was just feeling that
Being a little twisted.
lemonade vibe. It's so refreshing, so delightfully refreshing. But you know what else is refreshing? The fact that it is no longer over 90 degrees.
No, last week I was sitting there just like sweating,
Just,
during the show. It was
oh
like,
yeah. Oh yeah. Crazy, crazy. And so the weather was just much more pleasant this weekend. Much, very summery still, very warm,
super.
but not nearly so sweltering. Like I was saying, I was standing in line at the Sono Arts Fest last weekend, just waiting to buy some earrings. And in that 1 minute I was standing in the sun, just ooh, just drenched in sweat. And that was uncomfortable, friends.
It's a good thing you bought that soap.
Exactly. My 3 bars of soap from Comfort Zone LLC. Follow them on Instagram. I love their soaps, and I've gotten their soaps over the years at the Sono Arts Fest. So it made me so happy to be able to use those soaps immediately as I got home. That is so funny.
Mom and Dad are here.
Hey, mom and dad.
Mom
We
and Dad.
Yes, everybody say hi in the chat. We've got people coming in on YouTube, on Facebook. We trust there are people coming in on Twitter. We just we can't track that live. So hello, Twitter. Leave us
Hello.
a message for later. Oh my goodness, Chris, you've got some foam beer fangs
Oh,
there.
yeah.
I love that. Oh my goodness. Hey, Mackenzie Hurlbert is out there. Hey,
Yeah.
Mackenzie. Very good, very good. We are so excited. We know that our amazing guests, special guests, readers for tonight, are part of Mackenzie Hurlbert's writing group. We had Mackenzie on with us in the springtime, and she shared a totally awesome, scary piece of short fiction that had us all riveted. Chris, you remember that, right? I was,
Yeah.
ooh, we were all like electrified by that. It was awesome. Yeah, it was very cool. Very, very cool. But Chris, this past week, your daughter Frankie was away at drama camp, and
No,
fantastic time. Theater.
no.
No.
It was social activism camp.
Oh my God! Why did I? Oh, I didn't. I was so wrong. I'm so sorry.
I mean, she's done theater camp before.
Oh, I don't know how I mixed it up. I'm sorry.
Okay.
And she had a marvelous time, though.
Fantastic. Sure.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. I'm thrilled to hear it. Thrilled to hear it. It is 8 o'clock. It is time for our official welcome to FUMFA 104. Chris, every time I say a number over 100 on here, I'm just kind of blown away a little bit, you know?
104. It's pretty great, and
Yeah.
it's I feel I guess I know how people who when they turn 104 years old how they feel. Well, you think really that many? You know, it's like
Yeah.
I can't believe we're still here.
Right, it's sort of like this, yeah, you kind of don't believe what's, you're even still around. But anyhow, FUMFA 104, we're so excited to welcome Amy C. Martin and SK Marre, two fabulous fiction writers, and we're really looking forward to hearing from them this evening and getting to have a wonderful Q&A time with them as well. So looking forward to that. But Chris, tell us what we have coming up really soon.
Coming very, very soon on Friday, as a matter of fact. So a mere 5 days away.
Mere
we
5
have
days.
our in-person open mic
Woo!
at Eco Evolution in South Norwalk.
Mm-hmm.
Our second one, and first one was fabulous, and this one is going to be just as great.
Yes.
And we've got some fabulous featured writers who are going to be there, as well as some folks who are signing up and who will maybe just show up and sign up. And we welcome one and all.
Do.
Our great friend Midnight will be there,
Woo!
visiting from out west. Matt Madden will be there playing some music.
Woo!
Autumn Harvest doing some comedy. And then, of course, our friend Victoria Buitron from the Norwalk general area will be there to share some of her work. And then the following week we'll be in. So we won't be here on Sunday. We won't be here on this.
If you want to see us next weekend, you got to come down on Friday. And we hope that you do.
In person.
Yes.
We do exist in person.
I'm 6 feet tall in person. You've never seen it if you've never met me in person.
She's 6 feet tall. You got to come check it out.
You'd be surprised. You've never known
over me. We're kind of like this in real life. Anyway, we are back though on the 28th, and we'll be here with our friend Adele Anisi from FUMFA. She's a FUMFA grad, and also Dawn Burns will be here on the 28th.
Yes. And we know we've had a few people reach out to us, and we're looking forward to scheduling you very soon, hopefully in the fall. We are also excited about the New York City Poetry Festival coming up. And if you are participating in that and would like to finish off your weekend by sharing some work on the show, we're trying to put together a little special something for that if possible. So if you would like to read, send us a message. We are going to be putting up our fall survey very soon. So looking forward to setting up just a really fun season of readings for the fall as well. But like I said, you got to come out to the in-person open mic. It's going to be awesome. Sign up in advance to secure your spot, or just let us know you're coming by RSVPing on the Eventbrite. And that RSVP is, of course, just free. It just lets us know that you'll be there and just gives you a little bit of extra, I guess, like logistic information and stuff.
Yeah. And we, makes us excited to know.
It does.
We're coming, for instance, our friend Phil Lemos, who was just on here.
Lemos!
He's planning on coming down all the way from Massachusetts. I've heard that Chris Madden might be there.
Chris Madden, Woodhull Press.
Going to be great.
I mean, Connecticut folks, I know we have a wonderful writers group in Connecticut represented today. Come on down, share your stuff. If you want to hop over to Norwalk on Friday, we would love to meet you in person and hear you. But without further ado, Chris, we need to get started with our reading for this evening. FUMFA 104, Amy C. Martin and SK Marre. Let's welcome Amy C. Martin. Welcome, Amy.
Hello, how are you?
Oh, yeah.
Evening. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Also enjoying the cooling of the weather.
Sure.
Absolutely, right? It's so much better out there. And it's nice to like feel more comfortable outside, getting to enjoy these last days of summer, days before school is starting everywhere. But anyhow, let me share your bio with everyone. Amy C. Martin is the author of All Will Be Well, a historical fiction novel about the true Mayflower voyage and the mythical first Thanksgiving. She enjoys writing short stories about time, memory, love, and other fluid and uncertain subjects. Pieces of her short fiction have appeared in publications including Glorious and The Wonder of Summer in the Long River Review, and Chasing Stars and Flash Forward in America's Emerging Literary Fiction Writers. She lives in Connecticut with her dog, Boots. We're excited to hear you, Amy. Take it away.
All right. Hello. My name is Amy C. Martin. I write a lot of short fiction on various themes, and I have a historical fiction novel, as you said. So I'll be reading an excerpt from the novel a little bit later on, but I'm going to start with some short fiction. I like short fiction because it allows you to explore time in a different way. I often use like 1,000-word story to dive really deeply into just like one moment or 2 moments of time, or can use the same number of words to explore like the length of an entire life or several lifetimes. So the first thing I'll read is a short story called Chain Smoking, which does a little of both. It was inspired by a song called Chain Smoking by Liz Lawrence, so I encourage you to listen to that. Set the mood. I really like getting mood ideas for fiction from songs and from places out in the world. This one does have a trigger warning for addiction, depression, and implied suicidal thoughts. So if anyone would prefer not to listen to this one, I will be reading from the book in around like 7 or 8 minutes. So you can like mute, hop back on, or hop back on at 8:30 to listen to SK. So just FYI. So this is Chain Smoking. Oh gosh. Richard sat on his front porch, cigarette between 2 fingers, a sealed bottle of Jim Beam on the table. The cigarette trailed smoke into the quiet air. Pink clouds hung low overhead. Richard took a drag. The end of the cigarette flared. Smoke held for 3 long moments in his lungs before he pursed his lips and sighed it out. The taste of unfiltered menthol coated his tongue, his throat. He looked at the bottle of bourbon. It seemed to glow in the sunset, amber and inviting. He looked away, back to the trees. He wished he was near water. He'd spent 10 formative years on water, and he didn't like to be far away. 10 years on the edge of oblivion. 10 years half-shattered all the time. What the fuck was he thinking, buying another bottle? His hand shook. If he reached for it now, it might shatter, spill that golden, orange, yellowing piss all over the porch. The smell would seep into the wooden boards, and he'd always think he could smell it. Things had changed for a couple of years after Richard got back. Teddy was bright-eyed, full of warmth, and 22. Old enough, Richard thought, though 7 years his senior. It was Ted who was determined to pursue this thing between them. Richard should have known better than to allow Teddy into his world. He'd thought, stupid fucking idiot, that being with Teddy would bring out the best in him. Should have known he'd only drag Ted down, destroy him, because misery loves company. The cigarette dribbled ash onto the lapel of his blue-green plaid. Richard idly brushed it away and reached for the box. He shook out the last one, crumpled the paper carton, and tossed it over the railing of the porch. Fresh, white, blunt end held up to start burning off the glowing embers as Richard took a final drag of the butt between his lips. Teddy was a quick study. He'd learned all of Richard's moods. At first, he tried to cater to them. Then he tried avoiding them. It wasn't until the end, until after 18 months of dealing with him, that Ted began fighting them. It was useless. Richard had been fighting them for years. The only solution was one vice or another. Teddy became another. It worked for a while. For a time, when Richard felt that hunger coming up or when his heart started burning, he would reach for Teddy. When Teddy answered, it quelled the heat, damped it down, but he had only ever banked the fire. It was always there, trembling, waiting for the smallest spark. The clouds were fading to gray, the pink disappearing over the horizon. Richard didn't move except to crush out his old cigarette in the heaping ashtray beside the bottle of Jim Beam. He didn't glance at it. He didn't need to feel it there. Teddy tried. He had, and Richard hoped that somehow whatever Teddy tried would work. Hoped Teddy would find a way to fix him, and hope turned to belief and belief to reliance until Richard got angry that Teddy couldn't, that there was nothing Ted could do to douse the flames waiting to consume him. Teddy left, caressing Richard with the breeze of the door slamming shut. That gust of air shattered him because it meant the end. Richard picked up the bottle by the neck. He refused to cradle the base even if he felt his palms growing sweaty. He peeled out of his chair, slid down 3 small steps, sauntered along the path toward the trees. If he went far enough, there was a stream running through these woods. He could at least get close to running water. Richard found his way back to one vice or another. But Teddy found Mary Lewis, Golden Mary, with her charming wit and her charming hair and her charming smile that turned into a sneer when she was alone with Richard. Because she knew. Because Teddy told her everything. Everything that mattered, anyway. Richard doubted he'd shared the little things, like the way Richard massaged his shoulders or cooked him breakfast or kissed the side of his neck first thing in the morning. The way Richard filled him a bath or folded his laundry or sucked him off behind the door with his favorite song playing on the radio. Things that Richard had never done for anyone else. Teddy certainly hadn't told her the way Richard drove past the liquor store 100 times with eyes determinedly fixed ahead, the way Richard had counted out exact change for a pack of cigarettes, and crumpled it in a fist in his pocket and bought Teddy a chocolate bar instead, the way he'd hesitated 3 times in the doorway of that bar off Hamilton Ave and not gone in. Teddy couldn't have told Mary those things because Teddy didn't know. Richard stared down at the rippling brook. It was moving quick this spring. There'd been enough rain. The bottle dangled between his fingertips. His cigarette dangled from between his lips. Teddy didn't know because Richard didn't want him to learn how close he was at any second to the brink. Richard had had good aim once, but he shouldn't have been surprised when he threw the bottle of bourbon at a tree to have it miss entirely. Instead, it hit a rock poking out from the forest floor and shattered, spraying glass and liquid courage in all directions. Close enough. Twilight was running to dusk, especially here between the budding trees. He took the cigarette from between his lips. End of the pack. How many times had he ended a pack thinking this'll be the last one? But this time, he was certain. He flicked the stub into the running water, heard it hiss for just a second before it was submerged, dragged down. He expelled smoke with his breath of relief. So that was chain smoking. The next thing I'll read is an excerpt from my historical fiction novel, All Will Be Well. That's this one. The novel is set between 1620 and 1624 and explores the cultural myths that have evolved around the Mayflower, the so-called Pilgrim Fathers, and our concept of like the first Thanksgiving. It aims to look at recorded history and examine the things that at least I didn't get taught in school about America's purported origin story. To this end, each chapter starts with an excerpt from a primary source, so a document written concurrently with the events it describes or by the people who experienced them. Content warning for this one, it references a lot of character death. There are also some spoilers for the early parts of the novel. And in case this gets confusing, John Alden and Priscilla Mullins are the point of view characters, but they reference each other by their surnames. So John and Goodman Alden are the same person, and Priscilla and Miss Mullins are the same person. All right, so this is from chapter 9. And the excerpt at the beginning of the chapter is from William Bradford's book of Plymouth Plantation, which was published in 1651. And that goes, "But that which was most sad and lamentable was that in 2 or 3 months' time half of their company died, especially in January and February, being the depth of winter, and wanting houses or other comforts, being infected with the scurvy and other diseases which this long voyage and their inaccommodate condition had brought upon them. So, as there died sometimes 2 or 3 of a day in the foresaid time, that of 100 and odd persons, scarce 50 remained." All right. So this is Monday, 26th February, 1621. "John and Howland raised a beam and slotted it into the frame, then hammered it in place to secure the ends into their notches. They were helping with the construction of another building for common storage. Some of the men who were still walking were working on building their own houses, but as John did not intend to stay in Plymouth, he helped wherever he was needed. He did not mind asking Eton for advice and learning needed skills. He enjoyed his usefulness. It was better than being confined to the ship while he awaited her departure. After raising the beam, John employed himself in cutting strips for wattle. The work was less precise than coopering, and he tended to take more care with it than he needed. He lined the sharp side of his froe against the end of a long block of wood near the edge, then hit the back with his froe club. The tool bit into the wood, splitting the strip from the trunk as John twisted the froe away. It was calm and slow work, just the kind of steady chore that John enjoyed. In mid-afternoon, his peace was broken by the arrival of the longboat. John exchanged a wary look with Howland. Most often of late, the boat came bearing the bodies of Mayflower's dead. Miss Mullins and Miss Tilly were both tending their ailing families. The Mullins servant, Carter, passed yesterday. John stood, leaning his froe against a length of wood, and left Howland to continue their work. Master Bradford was coming ashore carrying a corpse. John recognized the wasted body of Mistress Mullins. She had not long outlived her husband. He blinked twice, but he could not even feign shock. Now Miss Mullins' brother was all the family left to her in the world. "I'll," John offered, reaching for the woman. Bradford, eyes marked with tiredness, handed over the body in gratitude. "If there is aught that could have joined us with the separatists in fellowship," John thought, "it is this." Not the compact they all signed. No piece of paper could bind men together as did this shared experience. Those lucky enough to be left standing cared for those who were struck down. The sickness took men, women, and children indiscriminate of religion. The need to care for the sick and tend to the dead was felt by all those who were able without regard for their differing beliefs. Despite his own keen desire to be of use as more and more days passed, along with more and more of the passengers, his longing to be back aboard Mayflower and headed for England increased. He wanted to turn his back on this place and leave it in his past. More than 36 lives had been lost since they anchored here, and many still lay sick. John could not believe that God had a presence in this place. God could not hear their prayers, for the separatists prayed without ceasing. If he could see them, why would he have allowed such atrocity to afflict them? Even the separatists did not deserve to be left as nothing more than dry white bones upon the earth. John shuddered at the memory. Either God could not hear them, as they had no intermediary to speak with him on their behalf, or this was a playground of the devil and God could not reach them. It was this place. Plague visited the Indians here, and instead of taking the omen as a warning that the devil ruled, the separatists took it as a sign that God made the land ready for them. Such conceit for men who walked away from the Church of England, who sailed across the sea so that they would not be ruled by their king. John dreaded the thought that they did not cross an ocean, but had instead crossed into Satan's hands, that they too would meet the same fate as the Indians, and soon none would be strong enough to bury the dead. It had not happened yet. John carried Mistress Mullins behind the common house. He would, of course, wait until dusk to bring the body to the little hill by the water for burial. Silent, dark, 1 or 2 man burials, with no litany, no service, not even a grave marker, all to keep their dwindling numbers and weakness from the Indians. John feared their position enough not to argue. If Standish believed that watching them bury their dead would give the Indians the confidence to attack, John would keep digging in the dark. It would not matter much longer if the sickness kept spreading. He shook his head, glancing away from the body. He ought to get back to Howland. He tugged the rolled-up sleeves of his doublet down to his wrists. He'd taken off his cloak in the sweaty heat of his morning efforts, and now a chill began to seep in. They'd try to finish preparing the frame tonight so they could enlist others to help raise it on the morrow. He turned his back on Miss Mullen's mother, regretting that he had ever sought an adventure in the New World. Wednesday, 28th February, 1621. Priscilla tried to think, but her brain was as frozen as her body. The strength she had found to mask her worry ran out. There was no need for a mask anymore. She had no one to pretend for. She blinked, aware of the sensation of her eyelashes closing on each other. Her arms felt like jelly, and her legs were starting to tingle with pins and needles, protesting having been locked in one position for too long. She turned her head to look for Tilly, who sat by the side of her own sick mother. Tilly's father had succumbed a few days before Priscilla's, and now her mother was close to dying too. It felt like a year had passed since Priscilla's father had died, but she had lost her whole family in just a week. She wondered what would become of her now. What would she do when Mayflower departed and she had no place to live? What worth were her shares in venture if she had no way to hunt for food or build a timber frame? Mistress Carver, the governor's wife, took charge of Mary Chilton when her mother died in January. Mary had been orphaned near a month. Priscilla had been orphaned for 2 days. The weight of it settled on her at last, now that there were no more pressing needs to attend. Hands descended on Priscilla's shoulders and wrapped around her in an embrace. Tilly had left her mother's side a moment to give Priscilla some comfort. She clutched at the arms encircling her, clasping them tighter. There was someone left who cared for her, someone in Plymouth who would look after her. She relied now on the strength of a 13-year-old girl who would, more like than not, be orphaned herself in a matter of days. Yea, though in valley of death's shade I walk, none ill I'll fear, because thou art with me. Thy rod and staff my comfort are, Tilly whispered into her ear. Do not forget what a comfort it is to have God with us in our hours of need. If I put my faith in God, will he be as father and as mother to me? Will he care for me and make sure I am well fed? Will he build me a house to live in and cut me firewood to keep me warm? Will he darn my stockings and hem my petticoats? Will he ensure a good marriage for me, through which I can give him healthy children? Priscilla sat with Tilly to stem the flow of worries entering her mind. She would not want. God would provide for her. God would protect her in this valley of death. When John learned that Miss Mullen's brother died, it struck him harder than he expected. There had been so many deaths already, and so little rest for those living. Between caring for the sick and trying to build some kind of settlement, everyone was exhausted. Joseph was just another body wrapped in cloth, so small and delicate that John could lift him in one arm. Yet, for one moment, he thought how terrible it was that one so young and lively should live no more. Winter's end was in sight, and the chill in the air was starting to part during the warmth of the days. Snow was scarce on the ground, and though there were no green things yet peeking from the frozen earth, it would soon be time for planting. They planned to sow their fields with the Indian corn they had taken from their anchorage at Cape Cod, as well as the barley and peas they carried over from England. Under the dark night sky, John carried Joseph's corpse to the burying grounds. He tried to find a place on the hill where the earth was not yet turned. Here he had dug a grave for Master Tilly, there for Master Winslow's indentured boy, Elias Story. and under that tree he had placed the bodies of Mistress Tinker and her son. John had buried so many he could not remember them all. It was so black here without a moon, the cloud cover obscuring even the stars from view. It wasn't that the night was blacker here than in Southampton, but there was no way to escape the darkness of it. There was no friendly pub with candlelight shining through its windows, inviting you in out of the night. The darkness overwhelmed him. He could feel nothing. His capacity for fear and sadness was stretched too far. Now his life was work. He would dig, then he would sleep, then tomorrow he would cut trees and trim boards and start to build a frame for a new house. Then he would be needed to dig again. Miss Mullins was the sole member of her family left living. Yet the rest of the company fared no better. Death followed death, leaving Miss Mullins an orphan, Master Bradford a widower, and few families intact. Tinker's family had been decimated. John was fair sure he was not now alone in missing the comforting lights of home, the warmth and company and the food. Oh, how nice it would be to sup in a pub with a mug of beer and a fire. Oh, how he longed to return to his comfortable life in England, to go to a proper church on Sunday and not sit in a huddled tangle listening to Brewster profess his seditious sermons. John yearned to go back to his life, to forget the staring eyes of the dead he buried. He wanted to escape the turned-over heap that was once a simple hill by the water, where now the names of the dead ran together like the soft dirt that covered their bodies. Saturday, 10th March, 1621. Priscilla moved into the Carver's house with Mary Chilton and with Tilly. Carver's one-room home smelled of fresh-cut thatch mingled with the muddy odor of daub. By the time night fell, Priscilla was tired. Though the busyness of the house was homey and sweet, she desired a few moments of peace to be by herself. She took her cloak from the back of a chair, for the coat hooks were not yet installed, and wandered down the street towards the shore. It felt odd to be on land overnight. She had spent every night but one of the past 8 months sleeping on Mayflower. Now she could see the ship at its anchor, floating far off in the bay. The hill where their dead lay buried loomed over her as she approached the harbor, and she turned away from it. She untied her coif and let the sea breeze rustle through her long hair. The moon glowed, a waxing crescent, and shone a path of light across the rippling surface of the bay. She spotted the same large boulder perched by the edge of the shore, on which she had sat and prayed with Goodman Alden. Her evening prayer brought her some strength before. Perhaps it could give her some solace now. She hoisted herself up onto the rock and nestled into its curves, but she found she did not want to pray. She just waited. Lapping waves caressed the sides of her large throne, making a soothing, rhythmic noise. It was interrupted by the crunch of boots walking across the pebbled shore. Someone else had come down to view the harbor at night. She felt his presence approach, but she did not have the energy to be startled. Goodman Alden climbed atop the rock beside her and sat down. She noted, with a small smile, that, though he kept a careful distance between them, it had shrunk since the last time they'd sat together. It seemed he had become as aware of her closeness as she had been of him all the time since they'd first met. He smelled of wood shavings and freshly turned earth. It was a pleasant scent, and she wished she did not know it meant he had just come from digging graves. They sat in silence for a long time. So that's what I had to read today.
Powerful stuff. Really intense. Like we're all just like captivated. We are stilled by your words. Such like vivid vivid scenery, like heavy imagery, but you're really putting us in these, you know, in their situation. I'm feeling burdened right now, you know. but that's how powerful and evocative of a scene that you've created here. You know how vividly you've created these characters, and you know my heart is just broken. And but at the same time, you know, that speaks to how powerful and effective the writing is, and for the first piece as well, just grabs hold of you and makes you
Right.
concerned.
But so different in so many ways, you know.
Yes.
But you know, the skill is there in both. And you know, in the novel, it's like I kept thinking of the title, "All Will Be Well," and I was like, "Oh my god!"
Sounds a bit ominous put in that perspective.
Yes.
An ironic title. It's like, man, no. I mean, I really felt the, you know, it's hard to put people back in that time and like really.
Absolutely. And you know, I was just looking back at your bio during that. She enjoys writing short stories about time, memory, love, and other fluid and uncertain subjects. You know how perfectly that captures, you know, trying to imagine yourself in these people's shoes, and of course we just can't, but this, like, the isolation, the loneliness, the grief, like trying to you know, imagine what that must have been, and this very interesting perspective of this individual who totally disagrees with the ideology of these folks and just wants to get out of there. That's really fascinating too. It's like, I really wanted a beer in the pub too. So, like, back in England.
Yes. I know, it was palpable. I mean, it's like you could like, well, hell yeah, they want to go back and like, you know, be safe and feel, you know, normal,
feel
normal.
comforted.
Wow.
Oh my. Amy, really powerful writing. Folks, save your questions for our Q&A at 9. Thanks again, Amy C. Martin. We will see you at 9. All right, Chris, starting off so intense with Amy's really powerful pieces there. But we have another reader this evening, as you know. Excited to welcome Chris. How are you feeling? How are you? That beer sounded so good in that pub right then. I was like, yes.
I'm glad I'm here and I'm not, you know, on like sitting there on Plymouth Rock freezing my butt off, or you know.
Same. Anyhow, we need to welcome SK Marre. Hey, SK.
Hey, how are you?
Fantastic. How are you this evening?
Oh, I am blown away by Amy. Oh, every time I hear her read, she's amazing. So
powerful, tense. Really awesome stuff. But anyways, Chris, would you do the honors of sharing SK's bio?
Well, of course I will. SK Marre is a Connecticut-based writer, photographer, and editor for Light and Landscape, a UK photography publication. When she isn't writing magazine articles about the best shutter speeds to capture a sunset, she's probably mountain biking, being bossed around by the cat because the dog has better manners, or working on her fiction. SK has short stories and flash fiction in the Northern Connecticut Writers Workshop Anthology 2020 and Havoc Publishing, previously Havoc Magazine. You can find SK on Twitter at skmarre, M-A-R-R-E, Instagram at skmarre, and then the what's that called? Underscore, whatever that is.
Underscore.
I don't know the lingo, these kids. Or through her website, www.skmarre.com.
All right, take it away, SK.
Whew. All right. Thank you for the introduction. Hey, everybody. I am SK, and I like to say that I am a grimdark fantasy author. And by that, I mean I have a completed novel and it is looking for a home, and you will hear an excerpt from it after as my second piece. So just a little bit about me. I've always thought that art, be it photography, or writing, whatever it is, it's an opportunity for expression. So I have a difficult time not writing about something that's important, just writing fluff. I mean, I have a terrible timing for humor, so I always throw inappropriate humor and stuff, but the core of everything I write tends to be based on something that I've seen with my friends that they're struggling with, or my family, or something I've struggled with, or social issues, political issues. There's so much to choose from these days. But, pretty much anything that I feel others could benefit, maybe seeing a positive or learning a lesson or whatever the case may be. So my first piece is a piece of flash fiction. As Katie mentioned, we are all in a very active writing group. Amy and I are both in the same writing group, as well as Mackenzie Hurlbert, who read in the spring for Katie and Chris. And so during the height of the pandemic, especially when we couldn't go anywhere, we spent a lot of time challenging each other to write like random flash fiction with random prompts. So this first one I'm going to read, the prompts were a road, a romance, and a meatball. And it's called Perfect. Fuck. Annie stumbled as gravel dug into her bare foot. She hopped on the other foot, only to lose her balance and crash to the ground. Her Louis Vuitton clutch and Jimmy Choos spilled from her fingers, clattering against the rocks. Tears prickled, threatening to ruin her makeup. As if it mattered. The day had already gone to shit. Would runny makeup be any worse than a smashed-up car in the middle of nowhere with no cell service? She swallowed against the pain and the self-pity and gently brushed the blood speckling her scraped palms. God, this sucks. Annie eased herself up from the dirt, taking care not to damage the chiffon of her dress. Well, not to make it any worse, at least. Thank God she'd chosen the burgundy calf length. At least it would hide the bruises. She retrieved her clutch, checking that her things were still tucked inside, and snatched up her heels. Vermont getaway, he said. It'll be romantic, he said. She scowled at the unpaved road ahead, twisting its way through the maples. Annie supposed if her tire hadn't blown and sent her car into a ditch, she'd have thought it was lovely. If she hadn't been forced to walk alone to find help. But it had, and she had, and any hope for tonight had vanished. It had been 4 years since she and Tom started dating. A big accomplishment, according to her friends, but they were married with kids and they had the luxury of time. Unlike her, a 32-year-old woman, how many eggs did she have left anyways? 5 years worth? 7? When their second anniversary had rolled around, she'd hinted at engagement rings. Another 6 months, and she'd given up on subtlety altogether. She loved him. Of course she loved him. But if there wasn't a future, how much more time was she willing to waste? It's $1 million question. She'd talk herself into setting a deadline, and then he'd do something. A thoughtful gift or breakfast in bed, a silly joke, and that lopsided grin that made her heart melt, and her determination wavered. Before she knew it, another year had flown by. Damn, why does he have to be so nice? He really was perfect. As close as anyone got to it anyways. Blonde-haired, blue-eyed, all-American specimen. An architect without the ego. He donated his time at animal shelters and soup kitchens, for God's sakes. And Lord knows, she tried to keep up with him. She tried to prove her worth, to show him the life they could have together if only he'd ask. But he hadn't. She looked down at her designer dress and expensive shoes, at the pearls around her wrist, and the clutch that cost more than it had any right to, at her chipped pedicure crowning dirt-stained toes. Maybe I'm not good enough. Even as she said it, though, she winced. Fuck. Power positivity. Maybe I'm not right for him. Sometimes when she went down that rabbit hole, she also remembered to wonder if maybe Tom wasn't right for her. Not on the bad days, of course, but enough to make her therapist proud. She didn't actually believe it. He was perfect, and well, she was her. Product of divorced parents and a string of abusive relationships. But still, she said it. Gotta save yourself, princess. The gravel made each step hell, but here and there, patches of grass gave her some relief as she trudged on towards civilization. Not as much relief as, say, sneakers or a working car, but it was something. And maybe civilization is a stretch, she said, limping past an abandoned house. The only person she'd seen since she turned down this godforsaken road was a state trooper in a hurry. She tried waving them down, but justice, it seemed, stopped for no one, not even her. And so she walked until the low sun filtered through the trees, dappled light giving way to long shadows. I've got to be close. Got to be. Try as she might, though, she couldn't actually remember what the GPS said. She touched the sore spot on her forehead and muttered, God, I've seen horror flicks that start this way. The gravel eventually gave way to pavement, and she went limp with relief. Doubly so at the Welcome to Northfield Falls sign nailed to a covered bridge. Finally, she said. Tom's family had a summer home in Northfield. She just had to find a working phone to call them. A general store stood on the far side of the bridge, looking like it'd seen better days. Flaking paint, crooked stairs, a sign taped to the dirty window advertising Carol's Meatballs, 2 for $4. But beggars, as they say, can't be choosers. She creaked her way up the steps and put a hand on the worn brass doorknob. Annie? She knew that voice. She'd know it anywhere. Annie jumped off the landing and raced around the corner of the building. Tom stood in front of a police cruiser, eyes locked on the officer in front of him. Annie Smith? The officer nodded. The car was on its roof. No purse, but the license was near the wreck. We spoke to her family, and they said she was meeting you here. Tom's voice cracked. She was. I know this is difficult. Do you need a minute? He shook his head. Miss Smith was sent to the hospital up in Berlin. What? Annie rushed over. No, I'm right here. Tom, I'm here. Neither turned to acknowledge her. The officer cleared her throat. I'm sorry for your loss, Mr. Woodward. Thanks. The officer left and Tom collapsed, shoulders slumped onto a bench. Annie crouched in front of him, clutch and heels in a heap at her feet. She waved her hand in front of his face. Babe, what are you doing? I'm here. Annie. He rubbed tears from his eyes, then jammed a hand in his pocket, pulling out a small box. A ring box. My perfect Annie. So that was the first piece. So now I'm going to go on to the second piece. It is going to be an excerpt from the novel that's Looking for a Home. And I do want to give a trigger warning. There is an assault in this. It's grimdark fantasy, so there's always violence to be expected in that genre. But if you are uncomfortable with assault, feel free to skip ahead till we get to 9 o'clock when the Q&A starts. So when I was trying to decide, what excerpt to read from the novel, I ultimately decided I wanted to introduce you to my favorite character. One of my favorite things in the world is an anti-hero, especially strong women who have been through hell and back. And so you're going to meet Ingvi tonight. Do you ever think on the time you had with your husband? The lordling asked. Ingvi froze. She wished to be anywhere else, preferably somewhere with mead. Lots of it. Every widow does. She fixed a sweet smile on her lips. I remember my head cracking against a wall and pain in my jaw, she thought. I remember seeing blood on his fist. I remember struggling as he pushed up my skirts. That was a long time ago, though. This man, the one in front of her, was the most recent in a long string of ill-advised dalliances. What's his name again? She wondered. Debo? Despite the late season, the midday heat of the southern grasslands kept his chamber warm. Debo sat with only a light blanket across his lap. The rest of him remained distractingly naked. Every widow thinks upon the life her husband provided her. Without a man to guide us and contain our sinful natures, she purred, life is difficult. His breath quickened, his musk filled her nose. Even in her human form, she had better than average senses. It said an unmarried woman is a danger. Surely not all of us. Yngvi gave her best approximation of a demure lady. It was, of course, laughable, given the state of his undress. You'd do best to find a man who can keep you safe and help you manage your widow's inheritance. Yngvi held her tongue. She'd hardly call poisoning her husband, the king of the skinwalkers, and stealing what she could carry an inheritance, but such talk wasn't suitable for polite company, or any company at all, really. Where would I find such a man? I had hoped it was evident, he said. A woman must make no assumptions. Astrid, I would marry you if you'll have me. Astrid? She paused. I always took a moment to recall which false name she'd given a lover. I would think on it. It's no small thing to commit to. Astrid, my beautiful Astrid, I'll give you the time that you need. Perhaps by tomorrow you'll be certain? Tomorrow? She throttled down her frustrations. Debo was a fine suitor. He just made a mistake in wooing her. I'm confident I'll have an answer by then. Or, she thought, that I can be far away from the city by then. As will be done, he intoned, a note of hope in his voice. Then I'll take my leave, so that I can consider your generous offer. She even threw in a curtsy for good measure. Debo stood, letting his lap blanket fall to the ground. Her breath caught at the sight of him. Goddess knew he was pleasing to look at, and for a brief moment, she wondered if she might dally a little longer. Stepping closer, Debo grabbed her hand, brushing his thumb over the tops of her fingers. Farewell, sweet Astrid. Farewell. She escaped from the room, gliding in near silence along the flagstone floors. As the city lord's heir, Debo lived in the largest building in Valley. The only place finer was the local temple. Normally, such luxury would have brought a smile to her face. Today, each successive room simply delayed her. After what seemed like an eternity, Yngvi snuck through the back entrance and into the gardens. When she reached the street, she heaved a sigh of relief. Marry him? Never again. Yngvi glanced back at the timber and stone house, rubbing at the ache building behind her eyes. Lying makes me thirsty. She followed the main street to Valley Central Market, a riot of smells, sound, color, where vendors set up stalls to hawk their wares. Shoppers and merchants alike overflowed the canopy rows, each fighting for the other's attention as they hunted and haggled for midday luncheon. Determined to find an ale cart, she wove through the throng like a salmon moving upstream. The hum of conversation washed over her. To her left, an old man in a faded dashiki quibbled over the price of a leather satchel, while a pair of young girls giggled and gossiped behind her. Yngvi's sensitive ears picked out the crackle of fires beneath the flatbread kilns. She turned down the next row of stalls, following the sound. Each step brought something new and wonderful. She could almost taste the pungent spices of Kurstor in the air, so strong was the smell. The subtle scents of dried fish and teas from the southern isles mingled with the spicy bouquet. It gave the air complex layers. At one stall, her fingers traced the intricate patterns from a grasslander's loom. Nearby, the colored silks of the southern wastes fluttered on a gentle breeze. Truly, the reputation of Valley's markets was well earned. Beneath these canopies, one might find anything from the wooden trinkets of the Chiton forest to the thick furs of her own homeland, the northern wastes of Skari. She avoided the last, though. Northerners stood almost a head taller than most grasslanders. Worse still, she was all muscle and elbows, with none of the grasslander women's curves. Between that and her coloring, she would never be mistaken for a local. Where grasslanders and the people of Kurstor were dusky and tanned, well, she had the pale skin, blue eyes, and blonde hair of her people. And no amount of robes or wraps or headscarves, none of that would hide that, especially not from the sharp-eyed Scarians. And so, the less contact she had with them, the better. Ale, mead, meat pie. Yngvi followed her nose across the square to the back corner, where an ale cart took up residence. How much for both a meat pie and some mead? A slick-looking fellow appraised her. 2 coppers. He must have thought her to be daft or very naive. She leaned in, headache pulsing. 2 coppers, you say? Aye. Well, just yesterday I had the same for a half copper. I should probably mention to Lord Dabo how far prices have soared so that taxes can be adjusted accordingly. Annoyance flitted across his face. Then he softened his eyes like a wolf pup begging for scraps. I am but a humble merchant with a large family to feed. The goddess must have blessed you with a very large family indeed for the cost of 2 coppers. 1 copper, he corrected her. 3 quarters, she countered. Aye, of course, 3 quarters. And 2 mugs of mead? The man hissed but nodded. He handed over a mug brimming full, which she made short work of. With the edges of her headache dull, she nibbled at a meat pie. A flaky crust hid the nearly spoiled mystery meat. Not the worst thing she'd ever eaten, but not the best either. At least the drink was good. My thanks, she said, passing the second mug back to her street vendor. Give my regards to Lord Dabo, if you please. He bowed, looking as though it pained him to do so. She nodded and stepped back into the crowd. If she were to slip from Valley before sunfall, she'd have to ready her travel bags and harness. On a whim, she veered down an alley at the outskirts of the market. The constant influx of traders made the city a perfect place to hide, as she was just one more face among a sea of strangers. Still, she hadn't acclimated to the constant press of people and took opportunities for quiet where she found them. This rundown portion of Valley had the jettied architecture of a growing city with thick walls, which is to say there wasn't room to go outward, so the craftsmen went upward. Each new level expanded until the space between neighboring roofs all but disappeared. It was an inspired solution, she supposed, but the jettied layers left only a small gap for sunlight to filter through. It lent the alley a narrow and gloomy feel. Moreover, the buildings had fallen into disrepair, with flaked paint and broken shutters hanging loose in their windows, and everything stank of urine and waste. She wrinkled her nose, regretting her decision to try a new route, when she smelled something else. Fear. She's a witch, and you know what we do to those who are caught with magic. Yngvi rounded a corner. A slight woman struggled between 2 men. The first brute had her trapped from behind, pinning her arms to her sides. A bloody dagger lay at her feet. The second man, a short South Islander, had a nasty slice along one ruddy cheekbone and what looked like a soon-to-be black eye. Yngvi's anger stirred. At least the dagger got some use before she lost it, she thought. The South Islander punched the woman in the ribs. As she slumped, gasping for air, he wrapped a thick hand around her neck. With the other hand, he tore open the top of her dress. The sight of it, of the terror on the woman's face and the cruelty on his, shattered something inside of Yngvi. She survived by staying out of people's affairs. This cut too close. Between one breath and the next, Yngvi had gathered her skirts and sprinted the length of the alleyway. With a roar, she barreled into the brute. He released the woman as he stumbled sideways. Before he could recover, Yngvi jumped on his back and locked her arms around his neck. Her rage uncoiled as she thought about all that she'd endured in her life, all that might have been forced on the stranger had she not happened past. She envisioned herself, her other wild self, standing above the men's bodies, tearing at their throats, watching them bleed. The brute swung his arms backwards, hands grasping, fingers tangling in Yngvi's skirts. She clutched tighter, burying her claws in his tunic. Claws? No, should be fingers. The brute slammed them into a wall and started spinning. Her leg collided with something, making her yowl in pain. Her wild self, half mad with ache and anger, flexed her claws. She buried them into the soft flesh below the brute's ribs. Rage made it difficult to think, but she knew how dangerous her wild self could be. She knew she should stop before she lost control, that she should be mindful of her secret. Then, with a snarl, she gouged the brute from gut to chest, reveling in the feel of slick blood on her paw. Between the brute's frantic circles, she caught glimpses of the other woman standing over the islander, hands splayed out between them. Fight him, Yngvi thought. Another spin, and Yngvi felt her gorge rise. Meat pie was a bad idea. Yngvi held on despite the nausea. When the brute finally paused, she readjusted her grip, ready for the next round of thrashing. Instead, he collapsed. There was no graceful dismount. She cracked her head on the cobbles beside him. The woman rushed to her side, tears streaming down her face. Are you injured? Can you stand? Yngvi's mind spun. Weak sunlight stung her eyes. You? We must move, the woman said. It isn't safe here. Crestview. Boarding. Room 4. The woman helped her stand. Some small part of her addled mind took in the brute swimming in a pool of blood. The South Islander sat on the ground nearby. His face was blank. The woman wrapped Yngvi's arm over her narrow shoulder, and as they limped away, Yngvi's sensitive ears caught the sound of a blade being drawn, a weak sob from the South Islander, and then nothing. The man took his own life. The woman beside her tensed and wiped a red-rimmed eye, but neither looked back.
Oh my God, SK! Intense. We're in this whole other world. We're stressed. We're like, go save this woman, and then we're like, oh my God, her secret's been revealed. I was on the edge of my seat. I'm very stressed, but I need to know what happens next.
Well, spoiler alert, Yngvi will stress you the entire book, but she's awesome.
But I love it. But you make that so palpable and so vivid. We're kind of almost in this like middle ages yet futuristic, like sort of its own world. You've really built a whole world in a short space of time, and it's really powerful, very scary, very intense, very unsettling, and you want to keep
take
reading.
all of that as a compliment.
Yeah, 100%, because it's that evocative.
Grim dark fantasy. I'm fascinated by this whole genre too, right? And it's so great.
Yeah. Well, and you guys did like Mackenzie's horror, so you actually may enjoy it. But they are epic series. I mean, there's no like single book. you gotta be ready to read it.
That's right.
So this is kind of a genre that runs through this writing group. I'm sensing this sort of this grim dark like fantasy, yet like real enough to give you the creeps and make you reflect. And I love it. That is so cool. And Chris and I, we always have an expectation of how our readers, our writers are going to like resonate together, and we've got such darkness this evening, but such evocative darkness. We're really getting into these different that grim dark fantasy is very cool, very cool.
World building. I mean, and we've got Amy, like Plymouth in the 17th century.
Yeah.
I mean, it was real, right? I mean, it felt very real, and in
Yeah.
some ways, it's not all that different from this other world.
Right.
Very great,
Well, and
and
actually,
witches,
so
the witches and all this kind of stuff that.
well, actually, so the cool thing about having Amy, et cetera, as a resource is we actually do have a couple of like ex-history teachers and that sort of thing. And so a lot of this book is actually based on, I mean, not the magic part, but the 1300s, the 14th century.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, like Amy will tell me, not that piece of clothing. It doesn't exist then.
Oh, perfect. That's so cool. I'm excited. I'm excited to ask, I love the dynamics of this writing group as well. I think that's fantastic, SK. And so cool, Amy, that you have that familiarity. But before we get into our Q&A, one more round of applause for Amy C. Martin and SK Marre. Wow, both of you brought really powerful pieces tonight, really evocative, really captivating, really kind of creepy and evocative and tense, and all of these like uncomfortable yet kind of like deliciously intriguing moments and stories and characters. We got to start off with our famous first question. Chris,
Yeah, we'll go Amy and then SK. But how has writing and being a writer changed your life?
A massive question.
Softball question.
It is. And it's really hard to answer because like I don't know what my life would be like if I wasn't a writer. It's just like always kind of been a part of who I am, and so it's really hard to be like, maybe I would be fine if I wasn't. I don't know.
What would I be? I don't know.
But I think there are times that I've like written more and times that I have written less, and I think it helps me to express like parts of myself. We've been talking about this lately, actually, like things about myself that I don't have any other outlet for, like all the darkness that was going on today. And it's also, I mean, I think the other major way that it has changed my life is it's connected me with SK and with Mackenzie and with everyone else in our group, and like with a bunch of other incredible authors, and given me the opportunity to just like stand around talking very excitedly about the thing I care the most about, and like have people not only like tolerate that but like participate and like I think that's like one of the best things is because it's seen as such like a solitary activity, but like getting involved in a group really changes everything, I think.
Right. They're not just like listening to you and encouraging you. They're cheering you on. They're supporting you. They're sharing comments to like.
They're pointing out my flaws.
That too. And how you can like make it even better. I love that. I love that.
Community, and there are many professions in the world where people congregate together. Cops hang out with cops, medical professionals hang out with medical professionals, because those people know, those are the only people who really know what you're dealing with. So it's really important for writers, I mean, not exclusively hang out with writers, but to have that
community,
that group of people to hang out with and do all that great stuff. So SK.
What if I just said ditto? No, I would say, I mean, ditto, definitely ditto. But for me, in general, just all of the arts, be it writing or photography, that sort of thing, I feel like what I want to say is it's the opportunities. And so I found that like, so an opportunity comes up, whatever it is, and through the arts, and I say yes to it. And then something else comes up based on that thing. And then something else comes up based on that thing. And I found that to be a pattern in my photography. And then I found that now to be a pattern in my writing where, like sure, you want to retire, I'll take over the writing group. Cool. Okay, take over the writing group. So now I'm, friends with Mackenzie. Oh, Mackenzie had this opportunity, and now I'll do this opportunity. You know what I mean? And so
Right.
know where saying yes will lead, but it's always somewhere good with my writing. It's always, I always make wonderful contacts and meet wonderful people and have these amazing experiences to be at events that I maybe wouldn't have been at before, and it's just really enriched my life.
That is so wonderful, SK. We love when people get excited about community, and now we're connected. You're part of our extended community, and we just love that, because it is so much of the time, a bit of a solitary craft, but it's so essential to have that community connection, and it's just a wonderful feeling, and it's. It helps our work, and it just is such a rich part of our lives. That's awesome. Both of you. We have some questions popping up in the chat. We have one from Amy. Yay!
Okay, Amy.
I love hearing you talk about this.
Yes, well, when we had several comments in the chat, if you had a chance to see it, we all want to know, SK, about your world building.
Okay, so like I said, I have a hard time not including like political and social issues in what I write. And so for my world building, for whatever reason, the 14th century resonated with me. But one of the big issues in fantasy in general is that it tends to be Eurocentric. And so one of my big goals for this world, well, there was a couple of big goals, but one of my big goals for this world was that it wasn't white Eurocentric.
Nice.
So this, the grasslands, which is the primary place that this story takes place, takes a lot of myths, Aboriginal myths from Australia, and includes a lot of basically the whole setting is either that or in Africa. So some way, shape, or form, some part of Africa. And I've drawn on. Yeah, I have some friends that have been really good resources for me, like a friend of Ghanaian descent, for example, who I asked specifically, can I say this thing? Should I say this thing? And so that was one of my major goals. And then the other major goal for this book was I wanted a world that was inclusive. That's another problem that I think a lot of places have. And so my goal with this was not to have people fight over anything but power. So you'll find that people love who they want in this, and that women, there is some sexism because it was the 14th century. So I couldn't completely get rid of that, but I created characters that overcame it. Or who just didn't give a shit, like Ingvi. Like I said, I had people love who they wanted. Doesn't matter what your skin looks like. And, I wanted the only thing in this world to be a fight over power. And in this world, magic is representative of power.
Nice.
So, yeah. So that's was
fascinating.
So that was a lot of pretty much every decision when I was world building stem from those two things.
Awesome. That's so exciting to me. Chris, Chris, have you ever done approached world building like that in your pieces? I feel like they're dwelling so much in more or less our world. It's such a fascinating and like kind of an exciting journey. Like you get to decide what happens here, but it's also such a delicate thing because you want it to be you want people to be immersed. You want them to really believe in this world.
Well, and I want people to see themselves, and maybe not, like murderers or whatever, but I want them to see. But even my bad guy, he has things about him. One of the guys in our writing group always says, even Hitler loved his pets. So you want, I want there to be all of my characters to be complex, and the good ones are not always good, and the bad ones have some
Yeah.
qualities you think maybe I could see why he's doing that, you know?
Right.
Yeah, they're
It's
always,
very realistically hewn. Yeah.
always more interesting that way. But this question of yours, Amy, could we could flip this right back at you, because
Right.
Mm-hmm.
you are building a world. It's a world that existed. I mean, it feels very real, very historically accurate. But that's something you have to build
Right.
well, right? Because in you have to do research, and not only just like what kind of clothes they wore and what did they eat and all this kind of things, but how did they talk? Um,
Right.
how did they write?
What were their
The
perspectives
writing,
on things?
right? How do you go about that? You just are you like a deep dive research person, or
I am, yeah. I have been I've worked in museums and as a genealogist in my former lives, and so that's
Awesome.
I have like a professional background in research, and so it can get very distracting. For example, during NaNoWriMo one year, I was determined. I was just like, I was writing a paragraph and I got to this thing and I was just like, I know I'm about to spend an hour looking up carpentry from the 17th century.
I
So
know.
I'm just going to put a question mark here and come back to it later. But I was very lucky with this book in particular because I have been able to go to Plymouth Plantation. I went to Plymouth Plantation several times. I visited a bunch of museums. I went to, I was lucky actually enough to go to Leiden in the Netherlands and go to the Rijksmuseum, which had a bunch of Dutch antiquities from the, not antiquities, that's further back, artifacts, that's the word, from the period. And I just, just to see the actual type of flintlock musket versus the matchlock musket and like what you would have to do. Plymouth Plantation does a great job because you can just go into a room and be in the room, and then they have like actors who are like talking in the period kind of dialect as well. But I also get like part of my whole purpose with this book in particular was to dispel the common myths about the thing, and so that came up just from reading the source material, which some people tell me it doesn't appeal to them. I don't know why you wouldn't want to pick up a 1624 book and read through it, but it's so fascinating. And for me, like all of the kind of depictions of like Bradford is the governor of Plymouth Colony for like 30 years or something. And Standish is like the stalwart kind of captainy guy and all of this stuff. And so you see them kind of personified in specific ways. You have these statues to them, like Squanto saved our asses, all this stuff. And then you read the text and you're like, that guy was kind of an asshole. I love that freedom to like form my own opinions about these people. Like they were historical people, but like I don't have to necessarily put my faith in the 400 years of historians talking about what they think that they were like I can look at these guys and think, well, you were a white man in this period, so there's probably some things that we're going to disagree with right off the bat. Even looking at how like the governor behaves to like the other people in the colony and other stuff like that. So I find it very interesting to speculate about history in a way that some historians might not like, but I don't know. I think
you have that freedom, in your writing. I think that's what can be so exciting about like maybe this kind of world building is that you're doing your own research and you are making it so I think realistic and so palpable, but okay, this is also your interpretation and it's also your fiction, it's your story. And I think that is just a fascinating level of freedom and exploration in that. I think that's just great. Very cool question on world building here. We're really exploring, two totally different worlds here, but with just a fascinating, very exciting amount of, freedom and just but also like insight into humanity, human life. Yeah.
I was going to just say real quick, building on what Amy said, I actually think that a huge part of both of our processes, it sounds like, is also seeing the places. And I think that's huge because, although we are recreating and or creating from scratch something, you draw inspiration for you write what you know, right? So, traveling and seeing places that you then incorporate into what you've written has been a huge part of my process as well, Amy.
Absolutely. Kind of like pulling from the world into the world that you are creating it, but being able to having had experience that, it's that much more palpable for you to describe it. That's very, very cool. We have a question from Steve here. It says, for Amy, what do you do to write in the voice of Richard in one story and then the voice of Priscilla and John, totally different, in the novel? Yeah, fantastic question.
Yeah, I don't have like a good answer for this. I think when I was writing the novel, I convinced myself that I couldn't write anything else because like it would distract me or something. And I don't think that's a good approach, because then I spent 5 years telling myself I should probably work on my novel instead of like taking the opportunities that might have come up to write like something else that would have been interesting and fun at the time. But then would I have ever finished? I don't know. So like, I think for me, immersion is a really significant part of it. For Richard in this story, Chain Smoking, a lot of that influence came from a character I was thinking about a lot at the time, but also from this song that I mentioned, this Liz Lauren song, Chain Smoking. And I just literally play the song on repeat 20 times and it sets me right into, a mood. And I think I love to, one thing that I just love to do in general is like listen to a song and try and flip it, like try and like you see what the lyrics say and how can I interpret those lyrics a different way and then make it my own.
Yes, a little bit counterintuitively and explore it totally differently. Yeah, that's cool. I absolutely do this. Amy, I'm pretty much all poetry in my genre, but if I need to like channel one sort of feeling or story, I'll do like the song on repeat thing to like keep me in that mode, that immersed, as you said, immersion. I think that that is a really powerful technique. That's awesome. Very, very cool. Very cool. Thank you so much, Amy. We have a question from Steve for SK. Do you sketch your fantasy characters before you write about them, or do you look up an image that fits for them? What a cool question.
Oh man, I wish I could say that I did, but I don't have drawing skills at all. But I did. So I have a very strong imagination. So I see them in my mind, and I got the voices speak to me, like all my friends in there, they talk to me. So they all have different faces. And so I have an idea of what they look like. However, it is important, when you start querying and all that for your novel, to sort of have something visual to represent them. And so I have, gone about trying to, sort of find them in the real world, find people that do look like them, or, play with like the AI art generators, that sort of thing.
Those are fascinating to me.
Yeah, they're super cool. And so, I do now have a more concrete physical thing that I can hold and say, that's Ingvi, that's what she looks like.
Cool.
But when it started out, it was just a voice in my head that eventually got a face, and I eventually described the face, and I was like, well, I guess that's what she looks like now. I have to stay with that. So
yes. That's almost I think that's almost like very, very dreamlike. Sometimes when you're sleeping, you're aware of a presence, a character, an individual, but maybe they don't necessarily have form, and then later on in your dream that it's like, okay, yes, that's exactly what this voice, this presence, this individual kind of looks like. I think that's fascinating and very exciting. And let me know what happens with the AI art generators. That's one of the coolest things I've seen.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun. Yeah, and I do think that your point about the dream is spot on, because like genuinely, literally, some of these were pieces of dreams that I had that made their way into the novel in one shape or form. So
that is so cool, SK. That is so cool. That very, very awesome. Well, Chris, I think we should be getting to our perhaps famous last double question. Wait. Actually, wait. Hold on. Just as I said that, I had a question myself. Sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so whiplash.
So famous third last question.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll tag it on to that. Oh, okay. Chris, I think I know what I want to say. So maybe our famous last double question, but I also want to add just how tell us something just wonderful, a little pearl from your writing group as well, like something just wonderful about your particular group, aside other than what you've already said. And I'll let Chris introduce her.
Let's just hear the answers to that.
Okay, we won't pile it all up into a giant question sandwich. We'll just start with this question then. Please, I would really love to hear one wonderful thing about your writing group that you have, aside from what you've already said, like maybe a fabulous pearl that you've gotten from that, or just another thing that just works really well for you. Maybe Amy and then SK.
Yeah, I think there's so many good things about it.
maybe three.
Sharing experiences and sharing resources we sort of touched on, but I think like the depth that it goes into it, like it's not like we share links to things, we share experiences with agents and pitches and different stuff like that. We share experiences with self-publishing versus traditional publishing. But we also share like ideas off with each other, and like what SK mentioned before with her her meatball prompt for her story, like we share prompts and we encourage each other. I think that's probably it, actually, is the encouraging each other to encourage ourselves sort of thing.
Yes.
Like let's set up a time that everyone who is available can come on and sprint together. And like, it's really nice knowing that, if you're in a rough place and you really want to be writing, but you can't make yourself do it, that you can ask somebody else to make you do it.
Yes. You have this community that's there for you. You're going to get through it, like with the help of these friends. That's such a wonderful feeling to have. Wonderful.
I said all the things, Shannon. I'm so SK. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I besides ditto again. I would say that, and the reminder we are generously reminded how we shouldn't use too many adverbs constantly.
Yeah.
So that is a thing in a writer's group, which has been great advice. I try very hard to heed it. But I would say the thing that I love about our writers group is it is a diverse group. Yeah. And by that, I mean, we have a nurse who is obsessed with learning about poison. We have a history teacher who is retired and is a black belt and has taught me a lot about weapons work, including demonstrations.
Awesome. Everyone, I'm sure.
Like, this is what I mean. So we have a person who speaks multiple language, who's writing a memoir, who has literally traveled the entire world. Steve, actually, who. Hey,
Steve.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's got the most incredible life, and read his memoir someday. I hope you guys all have the opportunity.
He should come on the show. Steve,
here you go, Steve. You get the idea. I mean, we have just such a wide variety of life experiences to draw on, and nobody is shy about sharing it, and so I actually think that's been really helpful, because no matter what we write, so my expertise is with horses and animals, and so I'm like, beavers don't do that. That's not right. You can't do that in the story. Mackenzie also has a history with that. So we usually say the same thing, stuff like that. So, there's a lot of expertise to draw on. And I actually think that helps all of us be better writers because it becomes more believable. And you want whatever you're writing to be grounded at least enough so that it'll resonate with people.
Absolutely.
That actually helps quite a bit.
I want to pile onto that more too.
Go for it.
Go for
it. Because like it's a space where people are so like generous of themselves and like we share so much. It makes it feel like a safe space to share things that you might not be comfortable sharing in other environments, like especially with sensitive topics or things that are like very personal. We have had people, bring all sorts of things in and know that like you'll get a critique, but like we are sensitive to, it's a place where people can share kind
space
of like
for you,
emotional and impactful and stuff like that. And hopefully not go home crying any more than usual.
More than you. I so get it. I love that. And I love this group. And I just feel all of the like just wonderful, encouraging, supportive, just warm and very inspired vibes. I just feel it. And we're so lucky to have had Mackenzie on here and both of you. And please, writers group folks, if you are watching, please reach out to us. We would love to have more of you on here. We're gonna get even more connected to your group. We would love to. It just sounds like incredible folks, and we really appreciate everything that you're sharing. It sounds just wonderful. But now we're going to get to that famous last double question. Chris, take it away.
Right. So a pearl of wisdom, right? It's a little piece of advice for writers out there. Most of the people who tune in to this little live stream are writers, and maybe bring something to them that they haven't heard before, or maybe they have, but they need to hear it again. Something you've learned along the way to share. So pearl of wisdom, and then a book recommendation. So Amy, start with
I think SK, do you want to do it first? Because so I can do ditto this time.
Sure. Yeah. No. Great.
Oh.
I would say, and this is maybe not advice you hear all the time, but I cannot stress the importance of a critique. I cannot stress it enough. There's a difference between your mom saying that she likes something and like actually having feedback that is qualified. But like I have grown so much through having critique partners. Now the trick is, of course, that you have to learn to put emotional distance between your writing and their feedback. The feedback is not an attack on you. It's really, if it's done well, it is just trying to help you improve your writing skill.
Right.
And that's one of the things,
even more fantastic. Yes.
Yeah. And that's the thing that I do see people struggle with, especially the first time they submit in our writing group. We do try to be kind, especially on the first run, but you are going to get feedback that hopefully helps you. And so I've had people really struggle. Like Amy made a joke about, I'll go home not crying more than usual. But, I always try to remind people, like, we are here to help you, and you will learn the skill of putting emotional distance. It just takes time. Even if you don't submit, just being in the writing group and hearing the critique and hearing the feedback and hearing all of the, suggestions on what you could try, or, it's just so beneficial to any writer, and I strongly recommend it.
Absolutely. And the recommendation, SK.
Okay. So since I am a grim, dark fantasy author, someday maybe when I get published, I wanted to recommend grimdark, but I have a problem, and the problem is I love too many authors. So I'm going to tell you my favorite author is Joe Abercrombie, for those of you who are not familiar with the genre. And my favorite book by him is Best Served Cold, who has a character who is just a train wreck of a woman who ends up being the biggest badass you can imagine. So that was like what I wanted to recommend, but it is an older book. So I'm going to sneak in a second recommendation, which is a brand new book. Well, brand new is within the last year and a half.
Sure.
The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. It is captivating. If you like Norse inspired, like think Ragnarok or Beowulf, chef's kiss.
Nice. Thank you so much, SK. And Amy, a pearl of wisdom and a recommendation.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing to. You can see how we end up talking for hours about things. Is just that another thing is that critiquing other people also improves your own work, because
100% always you're grabbing these little pearls.
Yeah, and that's always a good one. My one I'd kind of thought about was a little bit more typical, but I do just kind of want to emphasize it because I've been feeling it very personally lately, which is like, make time to write.
Yes.
Like, mostly because I've heard authors and writers and people describe long periods of not writing manifesting in like brain fog, mood instability, depression. Like it hurts you in a way that I think non-writers don't really understand. And when I've had the opportunity in my life to write every day, the piece of advice that I think that really influenced me was like, it doesn't matter if it's 2 words, write every single day, and you can't always keep that up, but whenever I've been able to do that, it's been magical, because then every day I had to think about what I was writing, and so it was constantly in my brain, so I was constantly getting ideas for it. So it was always like, writing was always sort of a part of me at that time. And the farther you get away from writing every day, the harder it is to get back into it. So I just
like blocking up this almost, if you're not writing, even if you're very busy, you're kind of, you end up blocking this part of you that needs to move, that needs to go into words, that it's healthy for you, to write every day or almost every day, like you're saying, because it's important to you. It's get what you mean. That's excellent, an excellent pearl and a recommendation.
Well, aside from All Will Be Well.
That. Just let us see it. Let us see the cover.
Let us get another good look at that.
So and just an insider tip. This is me, and I made this costume as well. So if you're interested in historical sewing, I have a little page on it on my website as well.
That's fascinating. So cool, Amy.
Then another book recommendation.
Another book recommendation.
In addition.
That just reminded me of something to say to your earlier question about world building, though. Actually, I'm sorry, I talk too much. No, just wearing clothes from the period was so incredibly useful in like putting me into like Priscilla's kind of mind.
That's cool.
So if you have the chance, if you're writing period or semi-period, to wear the clothes, that it does make a difference. It's cool.
I can imagine. I really can. Cool.
I want to sort of cheat on this one, because I don't want to just give one recommendation, because like, even though I've written historical fiction, I think it's important, even if you only write mysteries, to read widely. So that's my book recommendation, is read in all sorts of genres, read nonfiction, read poetry, read memoir, fiction, read all sorts of things, read modern stories, read stories written a long time ago, read everything. But if you do want a few recommendations, ones that are near and dear to my heart, one that I liked a lot, that I read a couple of years ago, for its depiction of autism. I like The Rosie Project, which is an Australian novel, and I know there's been some kind of like conflict around that, but I thought it was great. The Blood of Flowers is a great book. It's 1300s, I believe, and in the Middle East, and it's about the opium, and it's very interesting, and like a craft of like rug making. So that's a good one. There's a bunch of ones in different genres. So
I'm sure Amy, that's awesome. I'm sure both of you could just make us this incredible list of books that are just wonderful books that have inspired you in so many different ways. I mean, we all of us here could I'm sure do the same, but those are excellent recommendations. I just want to share this with you from our loyal viewer and poet Bauke Kamstra. He said, these writers show us there are many realities. I see it simply by living before cell phones. They show us other realities that were once true or speculatively true, convincing us of them as the best writers do. So I thought that was just a fantastic comment to end on. Thank you, Bauke, for sharing that about our guest this evening. One more time, Amy C. Martin and S.K. Marre. If you haven't, you have to pop on to Facebook and YouTube. Just see all the comments and the love that you've received in the chat. Thank you so much to our wonderful audience for watching. We'll see you next week. Oh, no, actually, we'll see you in person on Friday in South Norwalk, hopefully at Ecoevolution. Maybe your writers can come down. I know it's a little bit of a journey, but we'd love to see you if you can. We'll see you then. And then afterwards, Chris, the following week, we'll be back online with.
We'll be back in 2 weeks, right here, same bat time, same bat station, with Elanisi and Don Burns. And in between, we'll be live and in person in South Norwalk.
Gonna be awesome. Thank you both so much for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. And have a wonderful night, everyone. We will see you next time. Thank you.